Hey everyone, welcome to our small studio, 1C Game Studios, and today we are going to talk about simulators, not about their past, but about their future. In the studio, Albert Vladimirovich Zhiltsov, director of the studio and its executive producer, and I, Daniel Tusev, producer of the simulation direction.
Daniel Sergeyevich.
Hello, Albert Vladimirovich. Well, as you might have guessed from the setting, today we are not just here for no reason, but to discuss a new project. The name of the project is obvious. It's written on us. So let's talk about how it happened that we got involved in this topic and when it happened. So, when did this happen? It happened in 2022. Yes, if I remember correctly. And the point is that from 2012 to 2022, the entire IL-2 team was fully engaged in developing the setting of the Second World War. Yes, we looked at the Western Front, not just the Eastern Front, although everything for us started, of course, with Stalingrad. And all these years we have been adding various materials, undoubtedly new planes, and new theaters of war. And the guys have always tried to include a piece of new theaters in every update, technology. Because development is inevitable, we want to add something. The audience asks for something. There's something we've always wanted to add. But in this commercial sense, we have to earn our living, money. And to continue to do what we were doing, we had to release these updates very densely. And in fact, we never had time to work on technologies. And probably it could have continued like this forever, because if you look at other simulators, you can understand that the history of military conflicts and aerial ones is very extensive there, including World War II. But there was an internal revolution brewing. To integrate new technologies, a complete overhaul, and in general, we were rejecting it, until the year 2022. In 2022, we decided that we had reached a point where we didn't want to wait any longer. It was firmly decided that we wanted to create the next part. First and foremost, technologically. The next part. Well, then the second question is, why Korea? A referendum was literally held. It's always funny to observe, because everyone on the internet talks about some joint solutions, about everything else, and we, as usual, like all engineers and straightforward people, if we are doing something, they tell us what to do, we believe it and follow. So, in the year 2022, we prepared several options. These options were also suggested by the team members. Well, some options were obviously rejected. We couldn't make them, even if we wanted to. Yeah, we're not ready to create some kind of orbital simulator yet. There were only a few finalists left. They were quite different. For example, there was the Pacific Ocean, just for comparison, and Korea. Why we have added Korea to this list? I'm not sure. I can only speculate, because it seems very logical to me that when we talk about a new technological step, we also look at the history of combat aviation, and we just finished work in the range of the Second World War. So everything seems logical. Airplanes are becoming more complex. Equipment is becoming more complex. Our technologies are becoming more complex. And somehow, it seemed to me from the very beginning that Korea was the most logical thing we could do. There was a referendum. There was such a vote. There was a discussion, and all in all, Korea won not unanimously. Probably it would have been unnecessary, but with an overwhelming majority. Therefore, this decision is from our side. From a rational point of view, we invented it ourselves. We fell in love with this story ourselves. And today, we are sitting here because everything is fine with us. We have planned it. We went to do it. Luckily for us, we didn't need to discuss it with anyone in a complicated way. That's the background story. Sorry for its length, but that's the whole story. Well, besides that, it should be added that as of the year 2022, The route to the Pacific was too uncertain. There was no confidence that we would manage to do everything technologically, because, from a physics perspective, there are a number of technologies that need to be implemented for this, and not just from a physics perspective. And in 2022, there was no certainty that we would complete Pacific on time with the quality we aimed for. Maybe we can do this after this one. We're only good at doing sims anyway. That's why we wanted to do something we're confident we'll do really well. And in this case, Korea seemed like the most logical choice, because it's something new, something fresh. Firstly, it's incredibly beautiful. The landscape is remarkable, unique, and diverse. And, of course, the airplanes. Because jet aviation is not the first generation, the first attempts at combat jet aviation were back in 1944, 1945. This is already the second generation, yes, the MiG-15 and the Sabre, and these planes are to a certain extent perfect combat machines. That's one thing. Fighters, right? Because that's kind of the quintessence of fighters, with powerful armaments. And the appearance of the second generation is incredibly swift. It's an arrow that has been shot and cannot stop. But that's not all. The second point is, of course, we have always wanted, we have been engaged in piston aviation for a long time. And I've always wanted to have something really cool from this topic in the project. And the coolest thing from this topic comes after the war period. This is the late 1940s, and it is in Korea where the most powerful piston engine and fighter aircraft, specifically from the World War II victors, the USA and the Soviet Union were. Yes, it's also a place where pistons met jet aviation. Yes, a collision of two epochs. At that moment, as we are now looking from the future, it is absolutely clear to us how the world will continue to develop. I think for the pilots, designers, and everyone who was engaged in military theory at that time, it was clear that these planes were changing something. The picture of an aerial battle, the picture of the aerial war itself. But it was unclear how exactly everything would be changed, because the piston aircraft still had a fair number of advantages at that time, which could be used in various ways. I am also attracted by the appearance of the jets. After all, I came to the military reconstruction from the creative side. From that moment, for me, it's such a silhouette, starting from childhood, which I saw everywhere, in some magazines and everything else. And for me, it's such an emotional moment in this era ahead is a bit scary for me personally, because I have spent more than 20 years with piston aircraft, and I still understand what unfinished business we have, because we literally, depending on the assessment, different figures can be cited. I would say we have covered only 30% of all the potential piston engine aircraft. I wanted to continue, but on the other hand, I wanted to move on. Tell me, please, did we need to? Because, you know, the engineering topic, I am familiar with it, but flight model equations still present a certain difficulty for me. Did we need to somehow change our approach to what we do with these speeds, with the fact, in general, of a jet engine, and, possibly, with its features, including the military actions that took place there, because they, without a doubt, differed quite a bit from earlier ones. We had to change a lot, and not just in terms of implementation, but in our entire approach to development. For the first time in, well, I think For the first time in 13 years, we have truly invested in technology development. Previously, it always happened in the background. We gradually developed current technologies while working on some project. Here, we made a very strong push for a year and a half that is focused on developing our technologies and capabilities, including the physical model of airplanes. We had developments, we had jet aviation, but within the framework of the Second World War. Well, the Messerschmitt 262 fighter and the Arado. Yes, the Arado 234 bomber. Right. But it must be understood that in this context, there were only 2 planes, and some decisions allow for their specific implementation, but not for developing entire directions. And jet aviation. Well, because they always reminded me, both the 262 and the Arado and other similar ones, always reminded me of a propeller plane to which, well, essentially, they attached, well, in fact, the first jet engines, yes, early ones, the aircraft still had wooden elements. On the contrary, the later machines were built around a jet engine, and essentially even the design of these machines because of this central fuselage, we understand that the pilot was not very comfortable effectively sitting on the engine. In the course of this work, the core architecture of the airplane's aerodynamic system was improved. Overall, we are now able to tune not only jet and piston aircraft within the Korea project. It's much more, let's say, engineeringly elegant than it used to be. Engineers won't understand. There are fewer compromises and more similarities in the core characteristics with the original data. In other words, there used to be adjustments here and there. Previously, we had to correct so that the specific turn or rate of climb values matched. Well, and at the same time, it negatively affected another characteristic. Yes, we might need to adjust the position of a specific aerodynamic element because of that. And now, our airplane is assembled very seamlessly from a set of aerodynamic elements, and you don't have to tune each specific element to get the final aircraft characteristics right. It all works out now. Of course. So, well, we were strictly told the time of our dev brief is limited because we could sit for hours. Yes, from morning till evening. We were strictly told that our entire first story needs to fit within 45 minutes, because after that, there will be many more with other guys. We will discuss each element of this simulation in detail. Let's leave airplanes aside for now and return to the landscape and the map, because we touched on it a bit. I see the first renders, and I am certainly impressed by the mountain air. The mountain range, yes, because these are mountains with rather sharp peaks, always, well, so to speak. The ground staff do not always see the beauty in the mountains. When you fly at a certain height, you are level with these peaks, which, of course, creates very interesting pictures, perspectives, the setting sun, mountains, ocean in the distance. Yeah, let's at least outline the map boundaries, because here, as far as I understand, we've reached certain limits again, which we can reproduce. Importantly, on one map, the condition is this. I take off from one side of the map, I can land on the other. It means no technical reductions occur. And, as far as I understand, the square we chose, for example, one of its sides is approximately 500 kilometers. The full size of the square detailed landscape is exactly 500 by 500 kilometers. I don't remember how accurate this is, but roughly speaking. Plus, there's a margin, of course, so that when you fly to the edge of the map, well, It's obvious that there can't be a sharp cliff where the water falls and you see the turtle that is holding the world below. That's not how it works. So, there's a flying zone of 440 by 440. We will show the maps later. Let's briefly mention it here. Specifically, the lower border of the map and the upper limit, because the Korean peninsula as a whole wouldn't fit due to the specifics of the air battles themselves. Takeoffs occurred from different places, not always literally on the Korean territory. Northern and southern airfields and aircraft carriers were used, right? And so, to make it clear, let's say the lower and upper limits of the map. Well, the southern border, it's probably about 50 kilometers south of Seoul. So, actually, it's from Seoul because I also checked, and it's kind of below the city. And what is the upper, the northern limit of the map? Well, I'm talking about a flight zone, about 40 kilometers, or maybe even 50, north of the area known as Mig Alley. And by the way, here are my main memories of the Korean War. What was the name of that reservoir again? My main fears about moving to Korea are the place names because we will offend everyone, and it's always unpleasant in historical science when we hold back. Seoul and Pyongyang. We know how they are pronounced in the Russian manner of speaking. Well, it's basically, let's say, a hook, the peninsula's edge and another 40 kilometers up, because we had to include the Chinese airfields represented in our game. 4 countries will be represented as participants in the hostilities. That is, the various armed forces of the United States of America represent one side, while conversely, North Korea, the Chinese Volunteer Army, and advisors from the Soviet Union are on the other side. Which weren't there officially, but we have books that say something happened there. That's the kind of zone it turns out to be. I'm just saying so the viewer understands what kind of area it is. It's a huge one. In reality, this is the specificity of the flight, Mig Alley, the interceptions, and the logic of moving along the terrain. Because this is the period when we have reconnaissance tools that are much more active than even at the end of World War II. So, it is already harder to get to the point. Armadas of bombers are detected. Their flight paths are clear, and these were essentially hunting grounds for intercepting fighters. So, roughly speaking, at some point for the MiGs, because their main goal was not swift fighter-to-fighter combat, which certainly happened too, but their main goal was an interception. The goal, why they needed this power, this weaponry, speed, rate of climb, the ability to quickly reach high altitudes while traveling along the terrain. Yes, unnoticed. This is the main thing that jet interceptors and jet fighters demonstrated. Yes, providing new opportunities for interception. Here's a question for you. A jet fighter, that's clear. But did we forget? We'll have an attack plane again. Did we forget about our beloved old IL-2? And did it live up to the name IL-2? Good question. By the way, yes. Thank you for asking it. Asked it because probably those following us will be asking it too. It was a whole moment, you see, of breaking spears internally. Like, for example, naming a product. Because, well, there are a lot of jokes. Many heard a joke about IL-3. When will IL-3 be? Because there was already IL-2. So, there's a bit of truth in every joke. It was a problem for us too. Because we understood that the name IL-2 is legendary, of course, and giving it up in any way, shape, or form, it's an impossible situation. On the other hand, it's the name of a legendary airplane. This is not an abstract set of letters. It's a name and a historically well-known name. Essentially, one of the symbols of the Great Patriotic War. One of the most mass-produced attack aircraft, the famous attack aircraft. So, we came up with a solution. Basically, you can see it right here. Well, and you can see it on us. We hope you'll approve it, accept it, and we'll continue to live with it. IL-2, we've put in the series title, that is, IL-2 Game Series, because we are not stopping. With Korea, we will continue until our age catches up with us. What else doesn't stop us from continuing development? So we switched places. That is, if in all the previous games of the IL-2 series, this was the main title, and then we added subtitles like Great Battles, Kursk, Moscow, Bodenplatte, and it didn't matter what. Now we have switched places, because, as I said, with Korea, we believe that this is just the start of a new stage, and in this turn, we have extensive plans. So welcome to our new world, where IL-2 is now a new series of games, and the first game in this series has the title name of Korea. Thanks for saying that, because I would have forgotten about this topic, and I definitely would have remembered it. Basically, in our very first product in this series, this is Korea, the Korean War. However, there will be a certain noticeable homage to the titular aircraft of the series, because in Korea, the last plane from the IL-2 line participated. IL-10, yes, which I am sure pilots will really like it, because it is already a fairly fast plane with a new engine and new aerodynamic design, quite advanced, and still having powerful armament and good armor. Again, it will be interesting to see like how jet planes try to attack it, and it tries to evade. Yes, jokes aside, the IL-2, I already don't know where we will need to go. I think in subsequent air conflicts somewhere we'll have to find a place for this Ilyushin machine if we have it in the title. Let's find out. So, we talked about that, we talked about technology, but we also talked about aerodynamics. Should our players expect any changes, including, I don't know, visual ones? Although for me, this is always a strange question, because no matter how many times we draw the ocean or the mountains, they don't change. The same goes for the airplane. For example, the Yak-1, and of course, since the early 2000s, it has always been the same Yak-1, but it keeps getting more and more and more and more details, and in the end, we released the Yak-1 with 4K textures. Well, now I'm getting closer, and I can already see some technical inscriptions, yes, around the little hatches. That was a big deal earlier. At some point during the development of Great Battles, I thought, what's next? Because using some effects that are used in, well, I don't know, not in simulators, yeah, I don't want to say, but in casual games. I don't want to say anything bad here. Some of them look great, but nevertheless, they use some kind of blurring and stuff like that, which makes the picture look more cinematic and alive. But we are all about aerial combat. It's mostly pixel hunting, as my colleagues from Vologda say. So, you need to spot something at a huge distance on a cluttered monitor where something is already happening. Spot it, keep the target, maneuver, and eventually hit or destroy it. So we can't use all these gimmicks to make an impression, even though we know how to do them nicely. It's a dead end. So, Microsoft Flight Simulator demonstrated an excellent job with the landscape surface, yes, with the terrain, thanks to the use of these technologies that were developed within Microsoft. And what can we show? The question is a sensitive one, because it was a very serious choice, yes. In order to take a new, serious step in visualizing the flight simulator, we had to create all the content from scratch because, with the previous texturing and shading technology, we had reached the limit of visual quality. And in order to take a new step and make the airplane look as realistic as possible, as photographic as possible, It was necessary to use DirectX 12 and physical-based rendering technologies. Yes, PBR, as it is commonly called for short. Yes, and physical-based rendering. The technology is completely different in the methodology of texturing the airplane from what was before. And not just the airplane, but also all ground objects, landscapes, trees. Yes, everything that light falls on. Exactly right. And that means that this was the main reason why we created a new series of games. Yes, by the way, Daniel is exactly right. I forgot about this main reason, because for us, several years of this development have already passed since these decisions, and now we are recalling it all. Here's one of those reasons. Imagine dozens of aircraft and vehicles that we already have, created with dozens and dozens of skins, with dozens and dozens of their damage variants, hundreds of ground vehicles, a dozen maps, all that. And we sat and thought, okay, we will switch to a new rendering method. We just couldn't get the mathematics of the costs right. It was physically impossible to sit down and do it. And the transition to a new theater of operations, as you know, is automatically quite compact. Great battles. Now, probably few people would believe it, but initially, in 2012, there were 8 planes and 2 were collectible ones. I remember how much I was criticized back then. No other game since then has been bashed online like that because it had the same effect. Because there was a previous one, the magnificent old IL-2, a whole series, which already had 100. People were asking, why do I need your Battle of Stalingrad with 8 planes? In my old game, I have more than 100. We definitely did not want to end up in this same kind of situation all over again. So, in 2025, I hope we will see how it goes with our plan. So if we were to create a new World War II series, we would tell you again, look, LA-5, Yak-1, IL-2, BF-109, F-4, new, magnificent, amazing. Well, I think some of the audience would still say to us, guys, why are you selling us the same thing again? Yes. They tweaked it a bit, so they're selling textures and milking us for money. And Korea, by the way, is solving this issue. One of the reasons why Korea specifically is because, after all, this is already a different war. So, this is still a difference. Well, if we talk about the beginning of the war, there is a difference of 10 years. Well, it's a different era, respectively, already in aviation as such. Well, and such a transition to the new, from the old to the new, here it is fully justified, and in this way everything is harmonious. The whole puzzle fits together harmoniously with the new technology. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean we won't come back someday. We are pretending here as if we haven't seen each other in a long time, and this is specifically to make it easier for you to watch this material. In fact, we have debates on this topic regularly, on different subjects, and this is also a big topic. So now, what happens if we switch to Korea? The period of World War II using new technologies, with new opportunities, with new lighting. I think you will see it in the future. This logic of moving to a series of games should help us, neither soon nor instantly, and possibly with the help of the community, because in great battles, the community helped us. We have an excellent community. Maybe with your help, we will start filling a new folder, because that's how I visually perceive it, like a folder filled with documents, or a docket. Because when I was young and the internet wasn't around yet, and I was already interested in airplanes, I had to, get information from various magazines, remove pages with drawings, some pictures, foreign military review, all that stuff, and file them in a folder with the cover. And they were filed there for me, well, it doesn't matter, with some thematic selections. Now, I visualize all this for myself as, it's like we've opened a new folder now called IL-2 series. and will be able to add more and more new theaters of war, planes, including from great battles, so that in the end, from World War I, from flying circus, starting from something like Eindecker, yes, DH-2, these are the very early combat machines. Our upper limit has changed. Now we will be able to say, welcome to the jet age. From Fokker to the perfect flying machines. Fokkers had their role controlled by wing warping, meaning we pulled a cable to change the geometry, and we are moving towards absolutely perfect machines compared to the Fokker and other very early planes. So yes, I really hope that everything works out. Yes. And engines running on castor oil. What I like the most is not even this comparison, but the number of instruments available to pilots for controlling the airplane. In the beginning of World War I, rarely there was only one instrument in the cockpit, if somehow obtained from someone, taken as a trophy sometimes. There was such an instrument as a transparent little bottle, and the oil in it was doing something. And if it stopped doing that, then very soon, time to land. Yes, very soon. Accordingly, 1950s planes, which of course already have a huge number of different instruments that allow monitoring of already powerful, but still quite capricious and specific jet engines. We talked about the appearance, let's briefly mention, so that no one suddenly worries, that it will be the good old Il-2. Because for me, the Il-2 series has always stood out from any other excellent aviation simulators made in the world. With our comprehensive approach, we always said that we are not only about the plane, although it is very important, not only about aerodynamics, physics, ballistics, and its elements, not only about geography, the appearance, meaning the terrain should be like a real one, and we are also talking about aerial combat. And for aerial combat, we need a theater of military operations, which arises from the historical context, what was happening there, and why it was happening that way. And because of this, we are forced to spend significantly more time than we could if we were just making airplanes and the landscape. Yes, we always overthink. As for the historical context, in the case of the Great Patriotic War, well, I don't know of a second such historical interactive study about, you know, the Battle of Moscow or Stalingrad. Will we preserve all this with you for future generations in Korea? We will not just preserve, we will develop and expand. The idea is that we have the main game mode, the pilot career. This mode won't disappear, of course. Yes, it was a difficult question, what our main game mode would be in the new project. There were different options that we considered. A much-discussed dynamic campaign in the community, or an even cooler name, Dynamic War. The Dynamic War. A design was written for it. We studied it, we looked at it. We know. We even realized that we know how to do it. But we stopped before that. Yes, but we looked back, looked at the path we had taken, looked at what we were doing, and realized that our main value is the reproduction of historical reality, not only in terms of the aircraft's appearance, but also what is happening in a game mission. Therefore, it was decided to create a new iteration or a new reincarnation of the main game mode in the new project. The career of a pilot is now actually called not the career of a pilot, but the career of a regiment commander, because I really like this idea, so I don't mind it at all. Yes, we have long wanted to enhance the pilot career in great battles with new features, but it was, once again, extremely difficult to do because of the vast amount of existing content that had already been created and would have to be completely redone. And it, like a weight chained to a leg, did not allow us to make this leap. In great battles, this system will continue to develop, but in the new project, there is freedom. This freedom is only now and maybe before the next project. Yes. After that, this freedom will again be lost. Yes, because again, the amount of work to be done will become so large. And now, yes, this chance happens once every 8 to 10 years. We use it to make a leap. And the leap will be in a pilot's career. You will now act as a regiment commander, manage the regiment's resources, submit requests for fuel, spare parts and supplies, manage personnel, oversee the aircraft repair schedule, and all that. And this will affect not just on your results, but also on which events you will be allowed to attend during your career. And a principal decision was made that the career will be focused, not just spread over the years, but focused on specific important historical events during the war. Yes, let's just say why this is important to us, because we know that unfortunately, not 100% of the guys who play great battles play a career through. And it's a shame for us, because we did almost more work on it than on aircraft. And when we asked people, of course, they all told us that it takes an endless amount of time because we have the whole war day by day, and we have to fill these days. And essentially, sometimes that's how it has always been historically, but we don't notice it every day. We go to work, do things, and the days fly by. But in the simulator, it's not like that. And not knowing what to do, I didn't want to cut it in any way. I didn't want to reduce it to some banal set of missions, yes. And then we realized that probably it's better if we manage to show more of these truly important events. But this will be explained in detail in the next issue of our dev brief, because Zhenya Isaev will come to us from Belgorod, and we will discuss game design with him in detail. Here's an interesting question. Why did we delay the announcement for so long? Many people will ask us this question. Listen, I don't have an answer for this. I don't have it written down anywhere, like do this and that. So, point 1. Firstly, we have events happening in great battles. An announcement is such a thing. You announced something, people were happy, started looking for information, but there's none available. That would be like an announcement in a vacuum. An announcement in a vacuum is probably needed for something, but we are lucky people. We are self-sufficient producers. Yes, so we didn't need to ask the audience for money, for example, or to stand out brightly somehow. In order to attract these funds, we receive them from great battles. We didn't have any material incentive, and if there is no funding problem, why torment people? Firstly, for the great battles, as I said, various content is being released and will continue to be released, because essentially, once again, it's endless. This is a very important point. I want to draw the audience's attention when you analyze our words. Please note that great battles will not disappear anywhere. I don't know who, when, whether it will be us or some other heroes of the future who will be able to repeat the sim of this scale. Therefore, I believe that neither the announcement nor even the release of Korea should or can affect the history of World War I or World War II that we have been telling. For those who are interested in this period, please continue playing. Once again, I'm saying, there's nothing else quite as large scale, and we'll keep paying attention to great battles for some time yet, while there are guys making maps, making planes, and all the rest. My favorite planes are still not implemented in the great battles. This is sort of the first logic, right? So, the second logic is the logic of the modern world, in my opinion, from the standpoint of information saturation. Well, if we had told you in 2022 we would be doing Korea, right? Well, it would have been interesting for a day then, because you wouldn't have found any information about this, well, like, you would have forgotten, right? And we would still be doing it again now. We thought, why, get up twice, as they say if you can do everything at once. So, Daniel and I at that time decided, so we will wait until some point when it will no longer be just an idea, not just a presentation, not just a set of some postulates about what Korea will be like. It will already have something flying or playing. It will already be in a state of development, a prototype, you could say, and only from this moment we'll start telling you. Because for this episode, this is just an explanation of the announcement. So maybe, to remove some issues or to stifle some bad conspiracy theories, and vice versa, to give the right ideas air so they can live. And then Daniel and the guys, because I am such a leader, and there are those who do a lot with their hands, they will come and regularly tell you, that's why it was necessary. I think we should wait, because we are just starting our journey with this episode. This journey will last about a year, we hope, right? Which should end in some form of release, whether it will be early access or not. For now, don't ask us. We're not ready to answer this question, because on one hand, we understand there will be an audience that, right now, let me see now. It doesn't matter if it's crooked, sideways, with one wing, just let me see right now. I'm even ready to pay money. It's kind of good. It will give us certain opportunities. But on the other hand, it won't allow us to move at the pace of development that we find convenient, because if anyone has ever been in a car garage, they know that at certain moments, the car, to put it mildly, is not able to go anywhere. It's disassembled. The same thing happens during development. Everything will be explained there. Everything you need. Right now, we are just... But for this, it was necessary to gather information. It was necessary to prepare a response. This is a combination of several things. I believe this is exactly how it should be done, without paying attention to the hype, the hysteria, or even some super-hyped successes happening in the market. We are still talking about aviation. So, for a long time, if we release something, it lives for about 10 years, not a day or two, until the hype ends, and this needs to be understood. Yes, it should be understood. We will emphasize this again. We are not working for some quick revenue. We are now laying the foundation for a whole series of new products in the flight simulation genre. And this stage is very critical, because the advantages we establish now will mostly last for years, along with any drawbacks we leave behind. The issues we leave behind will persist for the same amount of years, so now we need to work as thoroughly and intensively on the foundation as possible. We haven't done this since 2014, so this is our new chance, and we are going to make the most of it. Let's do it. Hooray! Let's wrap it up to avoid dragging it out, because we, knowing the whole picture, can cover all aspects, right? We can talk about the ground part, about how managing your own, that is, your squadron or everything else, will be done, and leave nothing for anyone for the next videos. In general, dear friends and aviation and computer technology enthusiasts, there's a holiday coming to your street. The team, which has 20 years of experience in creating historical reconstructions on your personal computer, didn't hesitate and took the next step. It won't be long now. Daniel will be giving you a lot of information along the way. Happy birthday to the Korea Project. Thank you very much, dear friend. We did it! And if you like this video, subscribe to the channel, because this is where all the videos will be released. Visit the website il2korea.com. There will be developer blogs released almost every week, describing each specific aspect of development. See you.